Okay, welcome. My name is Eloisa Ramos, and I am here with my friends and daughter. Hi, Sonia. Hi,
Hi.
Teresa.
Hello.
Hi, Connie.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, and we're studying the text of A Course in Miracles. We are on Chapter 5, Healing and Wholeness, and we are on Section 2, The Voice for God. Okay, let's start with paragraph 1. Healing is not creating. It is reparation. The Holy Spirit promotes healing by looking beyond it to what the children of God were before healing was needed and will be when they have been healed. This alteration of the time sequence should be quite familiar. Excuse me.
You want someone else to read while you catch yourself together?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll read. Where did we leave off? This alteration of the time sequence should be quite familiar.
Hold on, Teresa. Let's just start it over. Go ahead and start paragraph 1.
Healing is not creating, it is reparation. The Holy Spirit promotes healing by looking beyond it to what the children of God were before healing was needed and will be when they have been healed. This alteration of the time sequence should be quite familiar because it is very similar to the shift in the perception of time that the miracle introduces. The Holy Spirit is the motivation for miracle-mindedness, the decision to heal the separation by letting it go. Your will is still in you because God placed it in your mind, and although you can keep it asleep, you cannot obliterate it. God himself keeps your will alive by transmitting it from his mind to yours as long as there is time. The miracle itself is a reflection of this union of will between Father and Son.
Okay. Okay, so let's look at line 1. Healing is not creating, it is reparation. Okay, so so healing is an effect of the source that is the miracle, which is love. And so healing is the rest. It says reparation. So another word for reparation could be like restoration. It's like restoring something to its original state, something like that. And so all that the healing is doing, it's not creating because it's not extending, which creating is. So, but it's returning the mind to the awareness of its natural, essential self, which is love. Because the mind that is not healed is sick. And the sickness is the belief that we are not loving, that we are, sinful, bad, that we are deserving of punishment, that we are evil. And of course, that implies all the thoughts we have of others, which are going to apply to us too. So any of those thoughts could be about other people, not just us, because we could believe that we're innocent and all the bad guys are, somebody else. But that in itself is a belief in separation, which is not the truth. Because because God created creation without separation. Because God is whole, there's no lack, so there's no gaps in wholeness. So God cannot create things that have, spaces, gaps, that the perception of separation is the perception that me as a body is a self-enclosed thing, and you as a body is a self-enclosed thing, and there's a gap in between so that we can act autonomously, me pursuing my own self-interest and you pursuing your own self-interest, which can conflict. And so that whole way of perceiving ourselves shows up as sickness in a variety of ways. And so that's the healing that we're working towards, the healing of the mind, the healing of that perception. And the Holy Spirit promotes healing by looking beyond it to what the children of God were before healing was needed, and will be when they have been healed. So the Holy Spirit is the part of our mind that remembers us as whole, perfect creations of God. That and that's the reference point from which it sees everything. And that's why it's called the Holy Vision, because it remembers our true innocence. So it cannot see evil, it cannot see sin. And let's see. I remember something about when I first started learning EFT, emotional freedom techniques. One of the things that really drew me to it is that I heard it described as the process of cleaning a dirty wooden floor. So the clearing technique, the tapping technique, is how we wipe away all that accumulated dirt that's just got layers, that has been cleaned for ages. So there's layers of grime that has built up on it. But underneath it is the natural beauty of the wood. So I really, really like that analogy. And this is similar to what this is saying, is that the natural beauty of what we are is still there. It's just that we've covered it up with all these layers of thoughts that are not true. And it distorts what we think we are. Well, it is what we think we are, because what we are is not anything that we can think of. We just are. So, so let's see. So number 3, this alteration of the time sequence should be quite familiar, because it's very similar to the shift in the perception of time that the miracle introduces. So it's a perception that is beyond time, okay, because time itself is part of the belief in separation. Because that's what time is. It's sequences. We have them in seconds, we have minutes, we have hours, we have a day, and then we have a night. So it's all split up into, pieces. And we have the past, and then we have the future, and then, we have the present. So we've split it up horizontally. And so the miracle, which brings about healing, takes the mind out of that belief in separation. So it's out of time, because it also takes us out of the belief in time. So it takes us out of the belief that anything in the past is real, and it takes us out of the belief that anything we imagine in the future is real. And it brings our mind only to the present, where there is no sense of past or future. Okay, the Holy Spirit, number 4. The Holy Spirit is the motivation for miracle-mindedness. The decision to heal the separation by letting it go. Yes, so healing is not really a doing. The decision to heal the separation by letting it go. Okay, how do we heal the mind? Well, we let go of the belief in separation. it's not a doing, because we're used to, let's see, we think that we have to work at being healthy. So, we have to work on our diet, we have to work on our exercise, all of that. But this is saying that health is our natural state. And we don't have to work at anything. We don't have to do anything. We just have to let go of the error in our thinking that somehow that is not our natural state. So it's an undoing. And let's see, number 5, your will is still in you because God placed it in your mind. And although you can keep it asleep, you cannot obliterate it. So we can almost say that the Holy Spirit is similar to our true will. That's one with God because it remembers God and is not separate from God. And it's in our mind. And yes, we can keep it asleep, like it says here, but we cannot obliterate it because it's part of our true nature. It's our true self. It's our connection to God. So God himself keeps your will alive by transmitting it from his mind to yours as long as there is time. And so you can think of that as communicating life. That's what being a creation of God is. So when you say, well, I am alive, well, I have a being that is still connected to the mind that has awareness of being eternal, of being let's see. Yeah, it has a an inkling that there's more to what I am than just this that I perceive in space and time. And that's our true will, because there's a knowing there. There's this little spark there that still remembers that. And 7, the miracle itself is a reflection of this union of will between Father and Son, because that union is a recognition that that true will, true strength, true power is love, which is what we are created from and what we are as beings. Okay, number 2. I'll read number 2. The Holy Spirit is the spirit of joy. He is the call to return with which God blessed the minds of his separated sons. This is the vocation of the mind. The mind had no calling until the separation, because before that it had only being and would not have understood the call to right thinking. The Holy Spirit is God's answer to the separation, the means by which the atonement heals until the whole mind returns to creating. Okay, so and anything there? Anyone want to say something with that one? No? Okay. Holy Spirit is the spirit of joy, and he is the call to return with which God blesses the minds of his separated sons. So our essential self is joyful. That's our true self, and it calls to us. That's why you can say that everyone in the world, in one way or another, is looking for happiness. Okay, however they've got it defined, whatever meaning they're giving to it, we're all kind of looking for happiness. We may be looking for it in the wrong place, which is the world. And we may think that, who knows, conquering a country, maybe that's going to make me happy. I mean, it could, it could mean, whatever meaning I think that happiness is, I'm going to pursue it. And then I'm going to find out, oh, geez, that's not really doing the job here that I expected, So I become disappointed and then I go look for something else. And so we end up having to fail quite a bit to realize, wait a minute, maybe I have to question the meaning that I am giving to happiness. Maybe that's not what happiness is. So, so that call to return to our essential nature, our true nature, is there. It's in our mind. And number 3 says, this is the vocation of the mind. So vocation is sometimes, let's see, is a calling that is what you're supposed to be doing. Sometimes people think of that in terms of a career. So sometimes, like, a teacher says, well, I really wanted to be a teacher. I had a calling, I just, it called to me, because it was it's not just that it's a career, but it's that it's a path. It's a path back to our original state, of remembering that. And so, of course, the mind had no calling until the separation, because there was nothing there to call us back to. We were already in the knowledge of oneness. So because before that it had only being. So the mind, the original state had only being, which is just knowledge, period, which encompasses everything. And there was no perception. And so there were no differences. So there were no choices. There were no decisions to make, that kind of thing. But when we chose perception over knowledge, when we choose to perceive rather than to know, the mind becomes a perceiver of differences. And therefore, it perceives itself as separate from others. And that is, a journey into fear, which is what the Course calls the wrong mind, wrong thinking. And so then we have to return to right thinking to be able to release fear, and allow our natural state, which is love, to be experienced. And so the Holy Spirit is God's answer to the separation, because it's the memory that tells us we are still connected and we are still one with God. And the means by which the atonement heals until the whole mind returns to creating. So the releasing of the beliefs that would tell us that we are separate, and fear is the main one, is what we are releasing, so that we can heal the mind, so that it can recognize its wholeness and return back to knowledge. Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. All right, number 3.
The principle of atonement and the separation began at the same time. When the ego was made, God placed in the mind the call to joy. This call is so strong that the ego always dissolves at its sound. That is why you must choose to hear one of two voices within you. One you made yourself, and that one is not of God. But the other is given you by God, who asks you only to listen to it. The Holy Spirit is in you in a very literal sense. His is the voice that calls you back to where you were before and will be again. It is possible, even in this world, to hear only that voice and no other. It takes effort and great willingness to learn. It is the final lesson that I learned, and God's sons are as equal as learners as they are as sons.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. What's it? What are you hearing, Sonia?
Well, it's very direct. It's literally saying, you have a choice. You either hear the voice for the Holy Spirit or the voice for the ego, wrong-minded thinking. So it's just interesting in line 7, though, because it says the Holy Spirit is in you in a very literal sense. So for me, that's really difficult to grasp because I always get like confused sometimes because when it says literal sense, because I can't have that viewpoint of the body, like it's in the body. It's not in the body. The Holy Spirit isn't in the body. So it's hard sometimes for me to grasp because also I always feel like whenever it says the voice for God, I always think of a voice, but it's not. It's just, it can come up in different forms, in different ways. So that's the only thing I got from that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the line 7 is that we tend to, when we hear the word you, we tend to think of our body. And the Holy Spirit is in our mind. Because earlier today we were talking about body thoughts. So Holy Spirit is not a body thought. Okay, it's not coming from the body. It's not in the body because the body is not, the body is a neutral thing. It's not a mind. So the confusion is because, there's the mind with which we think, okay, which is the ego. Okay, those are the ego thoughts, and those thoughts for the most part are all unconscious and they're repressed. And when they come up, they're fear-based, and it feels as if they're literally coming up to like consciousness. So as if they're coming up from the body, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, there's that thought, and it's a scary thought, but but all of that is just past learning. So the stuff that we repress, we want to forget, is still is repressed, but it's still held in the body. So it's as if the body had a mind. Okay, because these thoughts seem to be coming from it, but the body doesn't have a mind. The body can store memories, their cellular memories, and and we connect to those memories via the body. The let's see. So we're confusing the body, which is an instrument of communication. So the body is kind of like the radio. You tune into the information, to the memories, okay, with the radio, with the body. But the radio itself is not the mind. It's not the one that's generating all the data. It's not the one that's making all the music. It's just, the radio is just picking up the music. So that's the same thing with the body. The body is just like that. It's like an antenna. It's a TV. It's something that can pick up information and then show it, express it. So, and so by the time that the body is showing it, we have already decided that between the ego or the Holy Spirit. So that's why we're either in spirit or we are expressing attack thoughts, fearful thoughts. Because by the time they show up at the level of the body, at the physical level, the decision has already been made about what we want to perceive. So at that point, all we can do is just forgive, because we can't go back and we can't go back and change it. It's already, the decision was already made. And if we made it for the ego, then here's the result. We feel like whatever, we feel terrible. We're sad. We're definitely not joyful. Okay, so it's very easy to tell when we have chosen to listen to the voice for ego or for the Holy Spirit. So if we notice, if we notice how the quality of our experience, in what is coming through in that experience, is it fear or is it love? Is it kindness? Is it gratitude? Is it happiness? Is it joy? Is it feeling blessed? Is it wanting to extend and share blessing? And or is it like worry? Is it like stress? Or is it like fear about the future? Or fear that I'm getting sick, or fear that this is going to happen and it's not going to be good. So it's not that hard to tell if you really want to look at it. But most of us don't want to look at it. But see, number 10, it takes effort and a great willingness to learn, but it is possible even in this world to hear only that voice for God and no other. So it's definitely possible, but we have to really value it, because it takes great willingness. And so, yes. And so the 11, it says, it's the final lesson that I learned. And the I is Jesus. And God's sons are as equal as learners as they are as sons. So Jesus is saying, look, you're my brother. We're equal. Okay, we're all children of God. So, I learned it. So yeah, you can learn it too. He's not saying, oh, I'm superior to you, it's going to take you a few thousand more years than it took me. No, he's saying, look, if I can do it, you can do it. We're the same. So, okay.
Brings up a good question. How long did it take Jesus to learn?
Who knows? I mean,
Right.
but the Course says that miracles save, right? Thousands of years. And look at all the miracles he performed. So he saved himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, number 4.
You are the kingdom of heaven. But you have let the belief in darkness enter your mind, and so you need a new light. The Holy Spirit is the radiance that you must let banish the idea of darkness. His is the glory before which dissociation falls away and the kingdom of heaven breaks through into its own. Before the separation, you did not need guidance. You knew as you will know again, but as you do not know now.
Okay. What's anything there, Connie?
Well, that one line is a little tricky. Let's see here. Just needed to read it again. Line 3. His is the glory before which dissociation falls away and the kingdom of heaven breaks through. Okay. No, it just was worded a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, we have this light within us, and yeah, need to let that fall away back to its original state. Let the darkness fall away. Yeah.
Yes. So the Holy Spirit is the light, the radiance. And if that's why if we bring these ideas to the Holy Spirit, to our right mind, it literally clears them, like clearing fog, like the sun shining through the fog, or the light coming through and dispelling darkness. So the ego thought system, the beliefs of separation they're not true. They're not true thoughts. They're not real thoughts. They're made up thoughts. And because they're made up, the only reason why we hold on to them is because we value them. And once we value them, we believe them. And once we believe them, we cannot distinguish the difference between those thoughts and our real thoughts. Because by giving them our belief, we're making them real to us, even though they are not universal ideas, real to everyone. So it's a form of, you could say it's a form of delusion by believing things that are not real, and that's why the mind needs healing. Because we are, what's the word? We're fooling ourselves. Literally because we want to believe things that are impossible, and we want them to be possible. Because we're not in our right mind. Okay, so if we were in our right mind, we wouldn't be thinking like that. We wouldn't be seeing value, in those ideas. And so let's see. And that's why we need guidance, because we need to know that we have guidance within us, because in a sense, the Holy Spirit is ourself. So you could say, well, we're guiding ourselves back to our original state. Well, like we're waking ourselves up, which is, well, like, how can you be asleep? You know what I'm saying? The part of you that's waking yourself up is already awake. So it's almost like it's almost like the dream itself is a false idea. You see what I'm saying? It's almost as if so the further you take that thought system of the ego back, the further you go back, then you begin to see, oh, okay, well, the dream itself is not real, because dreams are not real. So the mind asleep is not real either, because God only made mind awake. So you start taking it back. So you get to the point where, well, yeah, the only thing that's left is what's true. So, we come into our right mind so close to knowledge that the awareness of that God takes the final step. So at that point, our will is basically one with God. Okay, number 6. I guess it's my turn. The Holy Spirit calls you both to remember and to forget.
Did we do
Sorry,
number
we're on
5?
Oh, I don't know.
That would be
Nope.
mine to do though.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. God does not guide because he can share only perfect knowledge. Guidance is evaluative because it implies there is a right way and also a wrong way, one to be chosen and the other to be avoided. By choosing one, you give up the other. The choice for the Holy Spirit is the choice for God. God is not in you in a literal sense. You are a part of Him. When you chose to leave Him, He gave you a voice to speak for Him because He could no longer share His knowledge with you without hindrance. Direct communication was broken because you had made another voice.
Okay. Anything, Teresa?
It just clarifies things. It's, the knowledge that God is not the guide
Mm-hmm.
and that He's not literally a part of us, but we are a part of Him. That's an interesting thing to wrap your head around, to think of us as being a part of Him. But it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that a little more?
We are a whole. We are one. I mean, I don't know if that's kind of a circular argument, isn't it? It's like how we are a part of Him because He existed first, maybe, but that's making stuff up, so that doesn't make sense. So I guess I can't explain that. I don't know what that really means. Do you?
I think it just wants to make sure that we are clear that we are not the source itself. We are not the source of ourself. Okay. So that so that the ego doesn't try to take ownership of self-creation. That's why we are part of Him, because we are His creations.
Okay.
Okay. So in a sense, yeah, He came first, but that's using terminology of time. But it just means that source and the created are, of course, they're still one, but we're not going to try to usurp the position of God in the sense that the ego would want us to, because that's a part of the belief system of separation, that bodies are self-created. They procreate. So the ego wants to believe that we have usurped the power of giving life from God, except that, the life that the body gives to another body is not eternal. So we have to really understand that life that is not eternal cannot be true life. So cannot be true creation. And that way we don't get stuck believing that we are a body, that the body is created by God, who is eternal. And then if the body is not eternal, how can the creation not be like for like? Then we start believing that opposites make each other, create each other. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to be very clear that we are children of God. Okay. And we share in God's divinity, God's nature as eternal. But we're still dependent on God as our source. We're not self-sufficient. Because in the world, we want to believe that that's the goal. When you have children and you raise them, the goal is for them to separate, when they're adults, and to be self-sufficient, and then go off and make their own little tribes. which is a complete belief in separation, right? So yeah. So let's see. So God is perfect knowledge, and he shares that perfect knowledge. The guidance is evaluative. Okay, so the guidance is needed in a world of perception, because only in a world of perception can there be a right way and a wrong way, because there's duality. And so, the idea of error becomes real in a world of perception. So by choosing one, you give up the other. So that's the belief in scarcity. So the choice for the Holy Spirit is the choice for God, and God is not in you in the literal sense. Yeah, you're a part of him. And so part of the belief in separation is that we chose to leave him. We chose to leave God. And so into that belief, God gave us the answer so that part of that belief in separation includes, because remember, it's a dualistic system. So it includes the idea that there is a counterpart to the ego that calls us back. Okay. So that's the thing about separation, is that it becomes a belief that God can be opposed. So now there's opposition. And so now it's a belief that's dualistic. So the Holy Spirit is actually the answer, because any thought that is of the ego will have an opposite. And if you recognize that, you will realize that all of the ego thoughts are completely meaningless because of that. It's just that we split the mind and put one in one place and one in another, and then we cycle back and forth, forgetting that we also believe it's opposite. And so by bringing the thoughts and the beliefs to the Holy Spirit, we are releasing that split in the mind, and we're looking at them and we're saying, well, that doesn't make any sense. How can God be both loving and also fearful, because he's going to punish me? Okay, then we start looking at this. Well, that doesn't, yeah, I can't make any sense out of that. What kind of God is that? So, yeah. Okay, so number 6. Okay, the Holy Spirit calls you both to remember and to forget. And that's what I was talking about, the duality of it. Okay, but the Holy Spirit can reinterpret that to help heal the mind. So the Holy Spirit calls you both to remember and to forget. You have chosen to be in a state of opposition in which opposites are possible. As a result, there are choices you must make. In the holy state, the will is free, so that its creative power is unlimited and the choice is meaningless. Freedom to choose is the same power as freedom to create, but its application is different. Choosing depends on a split mind. The Holy Spirit is one way of choosing. God did not leave his children comfortless, even though they chose to leave him. The voice they put in their minds was not the voice for his will, for which the Holy Spirit speaks. Okay, so the Holy Spirit calls you both to remember and to forget. So it's calling us to remember our true thoughts and to forget the thoughts that we made up, that are imaginary, that are fear-based. Okay. So we have chosen to be in a state of opposition in which opposites are possible. And that's what separation is. It's a belief that we can attack God, basically. because by leaving God, by not, let's see, what's the word? By disobeying God, we can oppose God, we can sin against God. And in doing so, we are making ourselves an opposite from God. We are now, if God is love, then we are being unloving. If God is innocent, then we are guilty. So we are making opposites possible because we believe that the impossible happened, and it didn't. So as a result, there are choices you must make. So once we make opposites, we have to take sides because we can't go both ways. There's a fork in the road there. Okay, so so in the holy state, the will is free so that its creative power is unlimited and choice is meaningless. Yes, so the mind is not divided. So in the holy state, we are free to choose. We are free, and that freedom is the will of God because there's no opposition. Okay, because there's no belief that we are separate from God. And that's the creative power, because now we are creating like God, co-creating with God. So that its creative power is unlimited. Yeah, and that's our true creative power. But in our in the state of duality, in the state where we believe that we are not holy, that we have opposed God, choice is what we consider to be freedom to choose. So number 5, freedom to choose is the same power as freedom to create, but its application is different because choosing depends on a split mind. So once we believe that there is opposition, our choosing is based on the idea that we have a split mind, that there's a right and there's a wrong. And therefore we have to be careful which one we choose, because one of them, and actually that wouldn't be so bad, if we just said, well, okay, I could be wrong, and that's an error, and I could just correct it. I just go back the way I came and take the other road. Okay, but the main problem is that when we say, oh shoot, I made the wrong decision, I'm on the wrong path here, I turn that into a sin. And once I turn it into a sin, I'm saying, oh, I did something bad that's deserving of punishment. Okay, so that's really the problem. The problem is that we believe that doing something wrong becomes justification for attack, for cruelty. So we begin to justify cruelty as punishment for making the wrong choice, rather than, well, let's just correct it so you can learn and not make the same mistake again. We go into punishment, which means that we don't learn, because then we become fearful. We become fearful of the punishment, and the fear itself will repeat the error, because we're thinking about what to avoid. We're thinking about what we don't want to happen instead of what we want to happen. And it's a like attracts like, because it's a projection. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Number 7.
My turn? Or his turn?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's Sonia's turn.
The voice of the Holy Spirit does not command because it is incapable of arrogance. It does not demand because it does not seek control. It does not overcome because it does not attack. It merely reminds. It is compelling only because of what it reminds you of. It brings to your mind the other way, remaining quiet even in the midst of the turmoil you may make. The voice for God is always quiet because it speaks of peace. Peace is stronger than war because it heals. War is division, not increase. No one gains from strife. What profiteth a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? If you listen to the wrong voice, you have lost sight of your soul. You cannot lose it, but you cannot know it. It is therefore lost to you until you choose right.
Mhm. Okay. What's standing out for you here, Sonia?
Well, it just makes me think about what's going on in Ukraine right now. I mean, just that's kind of a point blank, because it's all about gain and loss. I mean, uh, in terms of, trying to conquer a country, or, as what you're saying before, whatever we think will make us happy is what, we're going to try to gain. I think that's the main thing, is that, and I've done it plenty of times, that I think that I can gain happiness, or I can, buy, whether it's an object, or, a certain, thing, idea, belief, whatever, but it's not about gain at all, because that's not happiness. Happiness can't come from gaining. So um, it's just also this paragraph is a really good reminder, because when I try to listen for guidance, I always have to be still. I have to be still, because the ego is the loudest. It just starts, firing, instantly, like, no, that's not right, or you shouldn't do this, or, that's, the wrong thing to do. But it's like just trusting, I think, that in the quiet you will get the answer. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes. And it's also pointing out that number 10, no one gains from strife, because strife is a scarcity belief. And we think, the world of duality, once we believe that there's opposition, we are believing in scarcity. And the joy that the Holy Spirit brings is not a joy it's not one of specialness, of scarcity. So when we think about strife and about pursuing happiness, and we think, well, it's at the expense of someone else's pain, or my gain is your loss. When we look at it that way, then the scarcity idea is going to make 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 it into a dog eat dog world, where only the strongest survives, kind of a thing. And it's not true happiness, because even if you gain and you become the dominant one, it doesn't last. It's a false authority, because your authority is always going to be, you're going to have to protect it, because it's the kind of authority that can be taken down. So it's not true authority. and it's not true authority because it is based on, like Sonia said, on trusting in your own small, trusting in your own, what's the word, self, little self. It's not trusting in your higher mind. It's trusting in your little self, in your cleverness, or in your position in the world, or maybe it's force. It's confusing true power with force that depends on, might and weapons and attack and all of that. So that's why it says number 8, peace is stronger than war because it heals. So anything that that goes the other way is really a self-destruction, even though you may think that there's going to be a winner. There's really no winners in war. Everybody loses. And so the strength that we're looking for is the inner strength that comes from trusting in the will of God, because we trust that it's unconditionally loving. Yeah, and so number 11, it says, what profits it a man if he gained the whole world and loses his own soul? So if you listen to the wrong voice, you have lost sight of your soul. You cannot lose it. So, even people like Hitler and others, they have not lost their soul, but they have forgotten. They have lost the knowing of it. Yes, so it's still there until we choose right. So yeah, and to choose right is to choose another way, and the other way is love, and it's forgiveness, and it's the practice of love and forgiveness that it's going to lead us in the way of knowing the truth of our soul, and making that the guide for our action, so that it's right action, and not destructive, that it's loving. Okay, number 8.
The Holy Spirit is your guide in choosing. He is in the part of your mind that always speaks for the right choice, because he speaks for God. He is your remaining communication with God, which you can interrupt, but cannot destroy. The Holy Spirit is the way in which God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Both heaven and earth are in you, because the call of both is in your mind. The voice for God comes from your own altars to him. These altars are not things, they are devotions. Yet you have other devotions now. Your divided devotion has given you the 2 voices, and you must choose at which altar you want to serve. The call you answer now is an evaluation, because it is a decision. The decision is very simple. It is made on the basis of which call is worth more to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty beautiful paragraph. I love the reference to altars being devotions, and which one do I want? What am I going to choose?
Yes, and number 12 says is which call is worth more to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at some point, we get really worn out by conflict and fear,
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
idea of peace, inner peace, and love and forgiveness becomes much, much, much more valuable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Mm.
Yeah. So let's see. Anything else there? Both heaven and earth are in you because the call of both is in your mind. Yeah, sometimes people refer to the call, the call of the wild, I'm referring to kind of our baser instincts. We are being called, I forget how it was used, but so in other words, we can perceive ourselves to be of the earth or of heaven. We've split that up too. And we tend to look at being of the earth as our quote unquote instinctive animal nature. And either we're going to trust in that instinctive animal nature, kind of brute force, or we're going to trust in our divine and holy nature, and go that way. Because the call of both is in our mind. Yeah. But number 4 says the Holy Spirit is the way in which God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. So it brings the earth into alignment with the will of heaven. So this is how the earth is transformed. It's by the work of choosing the Holy Spirit, the right mind, and choosing forgiveness. And that's how we bring the light into the earth, that's how the mind is healed. And that's how the earth can reflect that healed mind. So, okay. So let's see. Number 9.
Number 9, my mind will always be like yours because we were created as equals. It is only my decision that gave me all power in heaven and earth. My only gift to you is to help you make the same decision. This decision is the choice to share it, because the decision itself is the decision to share. It is made by giving and is therefore the one choice that resembles true creation. I am your model for decision. By deciding for God, I showed you that this decision can be made and that you can make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's this is who's talking, Teresa?
Jesus.
Yeah. And so he's saying, I am your model for decision. And number 2, it was only my decision for God that gave me all power in heaven and earth. Okay. So true power is coming from the decision to remember God, to join, to release any obstacles that would oppose the will of God, because it is our will, not because it's a separate will, but because it is our own will, and we are basically just self-sabotaging when we oppose or block the will of God, because that is our only real choice. The choice for the ego is not a real choice. It's a choice to believe in illusion. And so it's a choice to deny the truth, which is sickness for the mind. And So number 7, by deciding for God, I showed you that this decision can be made and that you can make it. So we're being called to consciously make that decision. Because that's the only way to remember the truth of what we are. It's not that because the separation never really happened, but in order for us to remember, to accept that, we have to be consciously deciding to value love over fear and attack. Okay. Okay, number 10. I have assured you that the mind, this is with a capital M, that decided for me is also in you, and that you can let it change you just as it changed me. This mind, capital M, is unequivocal because it hears only one voice and answers in only one way. You are the light of the world with me. Rest does not come from sleeping, but from waking. The Holy Spirit is the call to awaken and be glad. The world is very tired because it is the idea of weariness. Our task is the joyous one of waking it to the call for God. Everyone will answer the call of the Holy Spirit, or the sonship cannot be as one. What better vocation could there be for any part of the kingdom than to restore it to the perfect integration that can make it whole? Hear only this through the Holy Spirit within you, and teach your brothers to listen as I am teaching you. Okay, and the Course in Miracles is called a mind training because this is what we are training here. We're training ourselves to listen only to the voice for God. Because we have already trained ourselves to listen to the ego, and we do it almost automatically now. So we have to kind of retrain our mind to undo that pattern. And so it's a call to, and it's a joyous call because it brings us, closer to our true essential nature, which is joy. So it's going to be joyous. Let's see. Okay, anything else on that one?
Actually, it's really interesting that it says that the world is the idea of weariness. That actually stood out a lot to me because it's it is tiring to try to pretend that you're a part, that you are a part of the world, but it's really just it's around projection of the idea of weariness. So I don't know. I just could definitely relate to that.
And is that because, okay, so explain that a little more. Weariness because it's struggle and it's what we have to, we face opposition or.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, if you identify as being in the world, it's so stressful and tiring to try to keep up the appearance, I guess, or to try to fit in to what the world is telling you. Yeah.
Yes, and you could, yeah, what, Connie?
Oh, it just feels like we're always fighting against the truth. And that's why it feels so weary. But I'm glad you brought that up, Sonia. Yeah, the idea of weariness.
Yes.
We've created that.
Yes, because it's actually not our true nature.
Mm.
You see that? Conflict and war is not our true nature. So we have to work really hard at it.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you're trying to go against a river, you know, like a current that's going this way, and then you're trying to swim
Yeah.
upwards, you know.
Yeah, except that it's upside down, right?
Yeah, which is, yeah, it is.
Oh,
Oh my God.
So that's why we don't want to battle the world. We
Yeah,
just want to see that it's not real and, bless it, forgive it. And
yeah, yes, exactly. Because we're trying to battle it, but it's making us tired because then you just make it more real by battling it. So
yeah, yeah.
but anyway, I just that kind of caught my eye.
yeah, it's good.
Okay, 11.
Oh, is it my turn?
I think so.
His turn? Okay.
Thank you, Sonia.
When you are tempted by the wrong voice, call on me to remind you how to heal by sharing my decision and making it stronger. As we share this goal, we increase its power to attract the whole sonship and to bring it back to the oneness in which it was created. Remember that yoke, if that's how you say it, I don't know, means join together, and burden means message. Let us restate, my yoke is easy and my burden light in this way. Let us join together, for my message is light.
Yes. So the word yoke is, you know what a yoke is, Sonia?
No,
No.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's kind of a farming term, and it's like a harness that goes on a horse or on a mule when they hitch either the plow in the old days. You hitched a plow to it. It was like a yoke that had the straps to it so that it could pull the plow behind it for the dirt. So it's kind of like carrying something. So what it's saying is that my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So to carry the message, to bring the light to the world, what he's saying is joining. And it's easy. Don't make it seem like you're a mule that has to carry this heavy burden for other people, okay, to bring the light into the world, okay. My yoke is easy, okay. It's joining. It's going to bring joining to the world, because it's going to let go of the separation. And my message is light, which means it's not heavy, but it's also light, spelled like we're bringing in the light that dispels the darkness. So it's not a burden. It's a calling, but it's a joyous calling, because for a while there, I was looking at it a little bit that way, because I would say, oh my gosh, I'm in this fully committed, and I'm, constantly clearing and clearing and clearing. And then I'm looking at, oh, well, here's my partner who's just laying back, not taking anything, not doing anything, So for a while I thought, oh my gosh, I'm having to like pull his load, because he's not taking any initiative into doing his own inner work, but it's not like that at all. I realize that he's in my life for a reason, and actually it's helping me on my own journey to be able to because I'm recognizing that everything that I see in others is really in my mind. So I can't just say, oh, well, that's his work. That's his, that's his stuff. He's got to clear that. So I'm no longer separating like my shit from his shit, I'm like, oh man, it's one mind, even the ego is just one mind. So, um, so it's not, the Course says we will awaken together or not at all. Okay. And that doesn't mean literally in the sense that every single individual person has to awaken before our own awakening. It just means that we have to recognize that there is no other self that's separate from me. So until I realize that, then I'm not going to be able to awaken, because it's one mind. So, okay, the last paragraph.
I have enjoined you to behave as I behaved, but we must respond to the same mind to do this. This mind is the Holy Spirit, whose will is for God always. He teaches you how to keep me as the model for your thought and to behave like me as a result. The power of our joint motivation is beyond belief, but not beyond accomplishment. What we can accomplish together has no limits, because the call for God is the call to the unlimited. Child of God, my message is for you to hear and give away as you answer the Holy Spirit within you.
Mhm.
That is so beautiful.
It is beautiful. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And look at number 4. The power of our joint motivation is beyond belief, but not beyond accomplishment. So we tend to think of belief as power. You got to believe in yourself, the power of belief. Okay. Well, oh, here's a power that is our joint motivation that is beyond that. So it doesn't even compare to that. It's incomparable, and it's not beyond accomplishment. So, because remember that belief is still the domain of the ego. So we want to be able to connect to the power that is beyond the level of belief, because even at the level of beliefs, there's separation. And if we identify with our beliefs, quote unquote, believing that they are right and yours are wrong, then we are still stuck in separation there. And beliefs, remember, are evaluations of what we have given value to. So it's not that hard to figure out what we believe. We just have to look at, what we spend our time on, what we spend our money on, what we give our attention to, what we care about. And we're going to see what our beliefs are. And if we have a problem with people who do not share similar beliefs, then we are attached and identified to those beliefs as our identity. And we will be limited because we will have forgotten that our true identity is beyond belief, beyond the level of belief. Okay. Okay, so anything else before we stop here? And just the other thing to note, see number 2, the mind with a capital M is the Holy Spirit, whose will is for God always. So we could say that, we could also say that's the Christ mind also. That's our true mind. But when we usually think about our mind, we're not really referring to the M with the mind with a capital M. Yeah. Okay. All right, well, that concludes section 2, the voice for God. And next time we're going to be doing section 3, which is the guide to salvation. Okay, so thank you for joining us. Thank you, and we'll see you next
Bye.
time. Bye.
Bye.